What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL record prediction. In this video, I'm going to break down the Dallas Cowboys 2020 NFL schedule and ultimately determine if the Cowboys have what it takes this season after a very disappointing 2019 with a new coaching staff, a new head coach. If they can get on the same page and put the talent that is on paper, one of the most talented rosters in the NFL, if they can actually pick up the victories needed to get themselves to the playoffs and ultimately in good position to make a run in this year's playoffs. Before I give you my record prediction for the Dallas Cowboys in 2020, make sure that you do Gronk spike the like button, subscribe to the Bottom Line View for more NFL videos just like this, and comment below your opinion. Let me know in the comment section what you think the Cowboys will do in 2020. You think they're going to be one of the best teams in the NFC, in the NFL? Or do you think they're going to disappoint once again in 2020? All right, let's take a look at their schedule, starting off with week number 1. And as you can see, I have the Cowboys taking it on Sunday Night Football versus the LA Rams. I just feel they're the much more talented team this year, even in the new stadium, which sure, that might be a challenge in itself, going to a new stadium with a raucous crowd and a very difficult environment. If that is the case, week 1, we don't really know if there's going to be crowds or not. But regardless, playing a Sean McVay team early in the season is a challenge, but I think there's a couple things that come into advantage here. Obviously, the Cowboys know Sean McVay's offenses quite well. His time in Washington, they haven't differed too much from his days in Washington. Second thing is they have a new coaching staff, but they're not really going far from what they are used to on offense and defense. I think Nolan is just going to maybe add a little bit of sprinkles on top of the defense and add a little wrinkle here and there, but he's not going to do anything drastic to change this defensive scheme. And offensively, Kellen Moore is still their OC, which he deserves to be after a great year 1. And I'm excited to see his offense with CeeDee Lamb in the mix in week 1 to see what he can offer and really to see what this offense looks like. Is it going to still be as run heavy as it has in the past? Obviously, last year they went to more of a passing attack, more so than basically every season with Dak Prescott, with Kellen Moore as the OC. So will they continue that? I really liked the element of play action they offered, and I think they're going to give that to LA in week 1. I think we're going to see some bombs away versus the Rams secondary. I think Dak's going to have a big first week, and I do think that the Cowboys will come out and win this game, even in what could be a tough environment in week 1. I just don't see the Rams being quite the same team that they were in the past, whether it be in their Super Bowl season when they went all the way to Super Bowl and lost, or last year even. I don't see them as talented from a depth perspective, from a defensive perspective. Specifically, I still feel their offensive line is pretty weak. They got rid of Brandon Cooks and Todd Gurley offensively, so they're missing the same amount of weapons they've had in the past. And yes, if you can block Aaron Donald, I think the Cowboys can. They should be able to win this game, no problem. Week 2, they play Atlanta at home. This game should actually be pretty interesting and high scoring potentially if Dallas cannot get home to Matt Ryan, because Matt Ryan, when he has time, he can dice you up. With Julio Jones, they don't really have a guy that can cover him on the outside the same way that Byron Jones could. So this will be a big game to test that secondary of Dallas, I think even more so than the Rams. I'm going to say that the Cowboys win a shootout type game. I think you're going to see a lot more shootout-esque type of games from Dallas this year. I think they're going to push the pace offensively. And I think they're going to be so good offensively that it really doesn't matter a lot of the times what the other team does. I think they're going to be able to score 30 on the regular, and I think that could be the case versus Atlanta. I will say something about Atlanta. Secondary corners aren't the best, but they have a very fast defense, and they're very good at tackling. So the short passes and tackling, that's what Atlanta's good at defensively. But if you can attack them down the field and run the football, then I think Dallas can do that. You can open everything else up. Week 3, they play Seattle in Seattle. This game is not easy. I think this is going to be a back and forth contest, and obviously playing in Seattle is a different type of animal. As we saw, though, last year, Seattle at home hasn't been as good in recent seasons as they have been in the past when they had a great defense. And I don't think Seattle has a great defense right now. I think it's just average. I think, again, Dallas can win a shootout type game. And I also believe that Dallas has played pretty well versus Pete Carroll's Seahawks over the years, whether it was back in the Romo era or with Dak in the playoffs. We've seen the Cowboys in the biggest of moments have been able to take it to Seattle. And I think that's the case again in week 3. I think Dallas is the overall more complete team. Yes, Seattle has the best player in Russell Wilson, but I do think that Dallas, in a game that I could see in the high 20s or low 30s, can win this game. Week 4, they play Cleveland at home. Cleveland's a really talented team. I think this might be, in terms of talent, their closest comparison in the month of September, because Cleveland has a lot of it. And I think it's going to be a challenge to cover Landry and Odell in the secondary for sure. And stopping Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt in the run game is a challenge as always. I think this game might be, the most difficult from a defensive perspective. But from the offensive perspective, if you can block Myles Garrett and you can, attack some of their weaker guys in the secondary, I think this might be a game where Zeke gets involved in the passing game for some of their linebackers, and maybe Jarwin has a big sneaky game here. But I think that Dallas should be able to win at home. If this was in Cleveland, I'd consider this a possible upset, and I still consider this a possible upset because I think Cleveland's a really talented team that could win this game. But being that it is at home and the way that Dallas has played at home in recent years, I think they're going to win. Now, week 5, they play the Giants, and I think this is kind of a sleeper, sneaky, upset radar type of game. First off, I have them winning 4 in a row, and, probably 3 out of 4 will be at least tightly contested. I'm thinking Seattle, Cleveland, Atlanta will be pretty close games. And then you're looking at the Giants, who, maybe they're not so hot in the month of September, but Daniel Jones, Saquon, Evan Ingram, Sterling Shepard, these guys and an improved offensive line, I think they are capable of winning shootout type games this year. And if Saquon can break 1 or 2 runs, you're in trouble. I actually think this is the Jason Garrett revenge game. I think the Giants go to Dallas and win this game. I think Dallas is going to lose 1 within the first 6 weeks, and I think that is going to be the game versus the Giants. I know it's kind of probably the one you wouldn't consider, but if you really look at it, it's a divisional opponent. Of course, it's the Giants and the Dallas rivalry. And then second, it's Jason Garrett's familiarity with the roster and with the talent and with the schemes. And I think that comes in handy in week 5. Week 6, they play Arizona. Kyler Murray, this is another game, Monday Night Football, that could be high scoring, that could be a shootout. Kyler can extend the play and make magic. Of course, they have DeAndre Hopkins now. I'm not quite sure what we're going to see from Arizona's defense this year. I think it's going to be a shaky unit, and I think it is one that you can dominate if you have an offense capable like Dallas. I do believe Dallas should win this game at home on Monday. I usually lean with the home team on Monday night regardless. And, this could be a possible upset. But again, if you are looking to challenge Dallas in a shootout, there's not going to be many teams that will be able to go toe-to-toe, point for point, drive for drive with the Cowboys this year. So I'm going to go with the Cowboys. Week 7, they play Washington in Washington. This is going to be a sneaky, difficult game, I think, because Washington has such a great front seven that I think this might be the one game in the first 8 weeks of the year, what I'm looking at, that might actually be the most difficult to score points. But luckily for Dallas, they're playing a team on the opposite side of the football where Washington doesn't have a great offense. I think Washington is going to struggle to move the ball versus Dallas. Even though I don't think Dallas's defense is great, it's not bad either. It's probably somewhere in the middle of the pack, and they have some playmakers. So I'm going to say Dallas wins. They could potentially sweep Washington this year. I think they probably end up doing that. They typically play very well versus Washington. They rarely lose to them. So I'm going to say that they do sweep Washington. At least the Jason Garrett Cowboys were very good versus the Redskins. So I think they'll sweep them again this season. Week 8, they play Philadelphia. Philadelphia at home in this game. And of course, this will be a big game depending on what the Eagles' record is going to be. Because right now I have the Cowboys with only 1 loss on their record going into week 8. So this could be an epic game. I think this is on Sunday Night Football, right? So this is in Philly, though. I think these two games, or these two teams, I should say, are really tight, very well matched. I think the Eagles have a defensive line and an offensive line that's one of the few on both sides of the ball that can really physically dominate the Cowboys in certain aspects. I think it's going to be difficult to get a run game going versus the Eagles. You're really going to have to rely on your passing game, and you're probably going to be in some uncomfortable situations with that, which I think will take some of the Cowboys' ability to score and move the ball away. And then on the opposite side of the ball, I do believe that the Cowboys can slow the Eagles down, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily easy, as Doug Peterson is a really good schemer and has kind of had the advantage on the Cowboys defense as of late. And Carson Wentz is a baller. So in Philadelphia, that's always a difficult place to play, especially on Sunday night. I'm going to say the Eagles win that one. And then you have week 9. You play Pittsburgh at home. I believe the Cowboys should beat the Steelers. I think the Steelers are a really good team this year. I think they're one of the AFC elite because they're one of the most balanced teams in the NFL when it comes to a pretty good offense, but then a really good defense. And I think that's going to be difficult for Dallas. But I also think Dallas is just a little bit more explosive than Pittsburgh. And when you really look and talk about Pittsburgh's offense, they just don't have a lot of explosive ability. They want to kind of grind away, run the football, maybe some play action here and there, some throws over the middle to Juju and all that. But I don't really see them going toe-to-toe with Dallas. I think Dallas is one of the few teams that can actually spread Pittsburgh out, be able to block them up front, and still be able to get one-on-one matchups that they really like. When I look at Pittsburgh, their defense, it's all about their front seven, and Dallas has a really elite offensive line even without Travis Frederick, so they can block. And then you have Cooper pretty much with mismatches all over, CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup. I think Dallas should win this game at home. Week 11, they play Minnesota in Minnesota. Although I'm not as high on Minnesota as I have been in the past, I do believe that the Vikings will win this game. And the reason being is I think that Zimmer has probably one of the best defensive philosophies and one of the best schemers defensively in the league. And if there's any coach in the NFC defensively that can take it to the Cowboys offense, it's probably the Vikings. And then on the other side, I think they have enough to move the football, run it, and kind of keep the Cowboys offense on the sidelines while Dalvin Cook is just chipping away. Not to mention that the Vikings did beat the Cowboys last year. I know it's a different team, different season, but this game is in Minnesota, and you have to factor that in as the Vikings are incredible at home. So I'm going to go with the Vikings in Week 11. And then as we talked about, I have them sweeping the Redskins, so they'll win in Week 12 on Thursday night with a bounce back. They play Baltimore in Baltimore on another Thursday night for the second week in a row. That's just an awkward scheduling issue, and I believe that's going to come back to haunt the Cowboys. I'm going to go with the Ravens at home. I think the Ravens, they have the secondary to match up with the Cowboys receivers, but they also have the run game to be able to wear down a Cowboys front that I'm not exactly 100% sure is going to be really good versus the run. I think they're better as a pass defense. They're quicker, they're fast, but they're not necessarily big, and that's exactly what Baltimore is, and that's where they can physically dominate you. Week 14, Cincinnati. I think Dallas is just way too talented for Cincinnati, even though maybe Joe Burrow is a little hot at this point in the season or feeling himself and getting better and learning the ropes, but I just don't see them losing to Cincinnati, even if it's on the road. Week 15, San Francisco. San Fran is one of the teams that I believe, like Baltimore, they're just really physically imposing. And on offense, Kyle Shanahan is just a wizard. And I think this is one of these games where even though the coaching has improved from Dallas, I think there's a clear coaching advantage here for San Francisco. And I think that's the reason they win at the end of the day. I don't think Dallas is extremely out-talented here. I think San Fran is one of the teams in the league that are just as talented as Dallas. But I will say this, they have the coaching advantage, and I think they can run the ball on Dallas, so I'm going with the 49ers. Week 16, they play the Eagles at home. I think they will split with the Eagles, losing the first game on Sunday night in Philly and winning Week 16 versus the Eagles. I think, maybe they win the first one and lose the second one. Either way, though, Dallas was embarrassed last year in the last game of the season in order to get into the playoffs. I believe it was Week 16 or Week 17. And, that's not going to happen, I don't think, twice in one season where they lose to this team. I just think the Cowboys are too talented to really lose to a team twice in a row. I don't see it happening, and I think the coaching has become more even. I think it was very lopsided with the Eagles before when they played Doug Peterson and Schwartz on defense compared to Jason Garrett and what they had. I think now with McCarthy, I believe more in him as a winning coach, at least when it comes to being the head coach and having an overall team philosophy and being able to motivate your players and being able to control and manage a game. I think McCarthy has been one of the best over the past 10 years in that regard. and I'm glad to see him back in the NFL. And then week 17, they play the Giants in New York. I have them losing the first game to the Giants because Jason Garrett revenge. But in week 17, I have the Cowboys going to New York and securing a nice playoff spot in the NFC East crown at 11-5. Yes, I have the Cowboys winning the NFC East at 11-5. I could see them going as probably as high as 13-3, to be honest with you, and probably as low as 9-7. But I think the Cowboys are a playoff team this year. I just think 2 years in a row, they're way too talented. Their one-score game record will improve. It was one of the worst in the league last year. It will regress, and I think their coaching will improve that immensely. I think what they've done offensively is going to put them over the top to force a lot of teams to become shootout-esque type of games. And I think that's very challenging for a lot of teams in this league. And looking at the schedule, they play a lot of battle-tested squads. You know, they play the Ravens, they play the Vikings, they play the 49ers, the Eagles, and the Seahawks, you know, and even the Steelers. But I think they should at least split in those matchups, making them a playoff team this year. So there you go. Cowboys, NFC East champs, and 11-5 record. I think they'll probably be the second or the third seed in the NFC this year, maybe the fourth, but I think they're going to be probably not the first seed, but probably the second or the third. That's the way I look at it. So Cowboys 11-5. Let me know in the comment section what you have for the Cowboys record in 2020. It's Mitch. Peace.